Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Very happy to be here with you today. My name is Michael Allen Crum Jr., but please call me Crum. I'm a Phoenix core team member, creator of Live Dashboard, contributor of features, fixer of bugs. And today we're going to be walking through, discussing, and getting to know the Phoenix LiveView lifecycle. So let's get started. I've got a couple of small, just short vignettes I wanted to go through with you today to kind of discuss some of the different stages of the lifecycle. So let me bring that up now. So the first one we're going to talk about is mount, and well, that's fun. Okay, so let's see what we can do here. Let's see if we can fix it. We've got an undefined function error at get slash or the root path. Function interweb.pagecontroller.live is undefined or private. Okay, I'm confused. Interweb.pagecontroller sounds like a controller, but the live function really makes me think this is trying to call a live viewer or invoke something. So I'm really not sure what's going on. Let's go take a look at the router. So if we pull up router.ex, we'll find all of the paths that we've defined for our application. And here we can see a big group of live paths. But this first one, well, something doesn't seem quite right. If page controller is in fact a controller, and let's check that first. If it is, then we don't want the live macro here. So interesting point about LiveView is that all live requests start the same way as a regular stateless HTTP GET request, because it is in fact an HTTP GET request. But for page controllers, we need to use a different macro. So we'll switch this back to the GET macro and try that again. Wonderful. Okay, here we are. So welcome to the internet and my talk on the Phoenix LiveView lifecycle. Let's start by having a look at the mount. Oh, well, I guess we'll take a look at the source. The mount stage of the lifecycle is the very first thing that occurs when you make a connection to Phoenix LiveView. It mimics a stateless HTTP GET, as I said, and it invokes this mount 3 callback in your LiveView, similar to a controller action. But it's only the first stage of the lifecycle. After the mount follows with a render. And as we'll find as we go through all of these stages, every stage of the lifecycle effectively falls down into a render. That assumes, however, that data changed. And that talks more about the diffing engine and how we actually send data, or the structure of the data that we send to the front end when you are, operating your LiveView. I'm not going to talk so much about the engine today, but the mount function leads to the render function, and that is where we actually get our HTML output. But this page isn't outputting my demo. It's outputting something, but that's not what we wanted. I think maybe let's remove this because, yeah, here we are. Okay, so nifty thing about LiveView is that you can co-locate templates. That template was rendered in line. It's not actually what we wanted. The co-located template's on the file system, and it has the full demo in it. So here we are. All right, and we can continue moving forward. So as I said, stateless HTTP is where we as our humble beginnings, but then we are able to upgrade, and when we upgrade, we find that we have available connection information like the user agent. So the thing about user agent is it's pretty worthless, but it's sort of necessary for my demo. So I guess we should probably fix it. The user agent comes through a stateless HTTP request as a request header, and that's where we can grab it from when it comes to the LiveView. If we look at the mount, we see a couple of different functions being invoked here that are specific to LiveView, and a couple that are specific to the mount callback itself. Assign new, which is used to take and assigns from the initial connection that would happen, in a controller, what you're very familiar with if you use Phoenix at all, but and also LiveView. But we can take the controller assigns and we can sort of impute them onto the socket, assuming that they are there. This is what assign new does. So this assumes that if there is a user agent value already on the socket, or I'm sorry, on the con, then it will be added to the socket. However, if it doesn't exist, this callback will be invoked and will be expected to supply the value for the connected render. Important note, the disconnected and connected renders of the LiveView lifecycle are completely separate. So consider a distributed Erlang environment where you have multiple nodes. You're making separate HTTP requests. So the connection, the stateless HTTP request that is made for the initial mount, the dead render, if you will, is not guaranteed to arrive at the same server as the one for the socket connection, the initial socket connection, which itself is stateless until it is, upgraded via the WebSocket protocol. So all of that said, here we're trying to assign new, and we're using a special function that is only available in Mount called getConnectInfo. Now, this allows us to pull information off of the socket connection, that stateless connection for the socket when it occurs. I'm sorry, the stateful connection for the upgraded socket when it occurs. And for that to happen, we have to define the data that we want from that connection on the socket definition itself. So for that, we need to pop over and take a look at the endpoint. And the endpoint shows us our socket live, where we also set up this is where the session information goes. It's also in the connect info. And this is the part that is shared between LiveView and your plug session further down in the endpoint. And that's how that's the security model, right? The shared request key the token that is used for CSRF protection and just as a security measure. So here is where we load this connect info. I see user agent. That doesn't look like what we had though. Let's try this. User agent. Okay, that I think will be better. And yes, fantastic. We have a totally worthless string that tells me lots of things about my browser. Don't trust this information, folks. The next step of that is that we should also pull the browser language, but we didn't. I'm sensing a theme. So language comes from connect params. Params are decidedly not connect info. They don't come directly from the socket. They are specific to LiveView in that they come from the live socket connection that we make. So if the data from that is coming from the client, there's about only one place it can be, and that's going to be in our JavaScript. So let's take a look at app.js and see exactly where this is happening. Hey, what do you know? Params right here off of the live socket. So params is a map or a JSON object here. And in this case, we're sending through language. Language. Well, that's better. Okay. So now seen where we can make a stateless connection and get a render from the stateless connection, and then an upgrade to a stateful connection containing data. If I do a quick refresh here, we'll see that there's a brief flash of unloaded or unavailable content where we're not pulling the user agent from the initial con for the dead render, if you will. That's something that we could correct. For in the interest of time, I'm not going to do it right now, but if you're interested, reach out to me and I'd be happy to talk to you more about it. So let's move on to our next example, and we can talk a little about navigation. So navigation is a place where LiveView starts to diverge a bit from what is available in a in your general like dead connections or dead renders. The stateless nature of HTTP is that you make a request to the server moves the world to serve your needs, and then responds with some data, and that data is on your page. And anything you do after that requires another connection back to the server. In the case of a LiveView, given that we have a stateful connection already, we have options when we go to move around the page. Perhaps we want to stay where we are and just update our state as it exists. Or perhaps we want to leave or even reload the page where we are, but we want to do it with some fresh state. These are our options, and they come in the form of patch and redirect. So think of redirect as any standard link, right? The interesting part of live redirect will become apparent a little bit later when we look at live sessions. But a redirect is effectively a link. A patch is special to LiveView. It's something you can only do here or with systems like ours, that where we are maintaining a process on the server that is holding that state for you, and the patch actually updates or patches that state. So handy table to kind of discuss that. Here's my little demo. We've got some links that will patch in a color and increment the value. And if we redirect, they'll reset the value. And they don't. Okay, what about redirect? Well, it's doing the redirect because it also did the scroll for us. But it isn't, and it's patching the URL. So, okay, so here's the workflow. We do a mount, and mount then leads to a render. But we do a handle params as well. So the navigation step invokes this handle params callback in between. So we have mount, handle params, render. Handle params is invoked instantaneously or immediately in the calling process when you do a patch, because it's live. There is no additional step to take. There's nowhere else to go. There's no new process to start or to shut down. We are simply patching the state where we live. So handle params is invoked immediately, and I'm implementing a pattern here that you will see in the Phoenix generators where we apply an action, and that allows us to sort of get some better symmetry with the way we operate our socket. So we move the socket, to the beginning, and we give ourselves access to the action easily, and then pass the params along, and we can see that we're setting color, and we've protected ourselves. We don't allow arbitrary input. We only take a few colors, and we update with the things. And I know we're getting to here because I saw the URL change. So we definitely patched. When we apply our action, so name. Well, so these parameters are defined because it's just a URL path. They're not query string parameters, so it must be defined in the router. I'm going to jump back over to the router. What did it say about color? Well, that's interesting. Okay, so here we are. Color. If we find our way back here and okay, that's always fun. That's an extra bit of fun. I can only assume that my terminal crashed in VS Code. Okay, well, it's not quite getting where we're wanting to go. So let's take another quick look. And we said that we needed to change this value to match the parameter names in the route, in the path in the router. Hey, and what do you know? It worked. And we have super atrocious RGB. But we are incrementing and we are patching, and that looks great. And now let's take a quick look at, and our redirects are working as well. And we can see that they find their way back to the mount where changes gets reset to 1, but then we find our way back through the call to handle params and apply action, which will increment the change to, get set to 0, and then we increment it to 1. Okay, now where are we? Let's jump over and look at events. It would just be swell if this one just worked. So events use the changes, and we're using a handle change callback, which will fire handle change on some form elements. We can take a quick peek at that over here and see that, yes, indeed, we have a form, and it has a Phoenix change color, and that matches up with the name of this. And these, we can verify that the names of our fields are also color. Hey, they're color, and it's probably going to work. And I'm going to guess that the internal parts are right. So let's do a quick, hey, it works. Fantastic. Reds and greens and blues. And we can see that we're even patching the URL here. So this is the handle event demo. But you'll see that all these callbacks, they compose very well. And if we want to be good citizens of the internet, then we want to make sure to compose our callbacks together. And when we do an event that changes the nature of the page that we are on, or if we want to maintain or persist some state, one place that we can do that is in the URL. And by doing so, it means that we can, I can take this link, I could share it with you if you were a big fan of that color, and you could come and see it too. Okay, fantastic. It worked. Moving on. Let's do messages. So messages are at the heart of everything we do here in Elixir, and is the basis for the just message passing nature of the Beam, of really truly everything that we do. So I have built a demo here to send a message to an agent. It will parrot it back to us, and well, that didn't work at all. No function clause matching handle event. Okay, so we sent a handle event to messages. Handle event send. That looks good. What did the body look like? Chat message. Okay, well. Aside from my typo of hi, that all looked fine. So okay, so once again, handle info, handle event, it's the same flow. We get a handle info. Handle info can come from anywhere. Anything can send us a message. So we get a message. In this case, we're sending ourselves a message. It seems we've matched on a tuple module and then the message. Here's our handle event where we're going to send chat. Oh, hey, naming things is hard. What do you know? There we go. Okay, send. That looks so much better. Okay, let's try it again. And I can fix my typo and I can say hi. What? Well, okay, so the agent received unexpected message in handle info 2. And we got, okay, the message format looks correct. This looks like what I was expecting to receive. To the code, I guess. What did we do wrong? Handle event sent. So we, here in mount, in our mount, we waited for the connected render with connected question mark, and we started an agent for a place to send state. It's just a demo. We held onto the PID, we assigned it to the socket, we pulled it back out down. We pulled it back out down here to update the agent, process send after. Well, you know what is interesting about an agent is that it invokes functions in its own process and not in the caller. So self is not what we want. So I'll tell you what if we do this? That's also not what we want because PID's not a function, but self certainly is. And so if we pin that or just bind that outside, then we can set the PID there. And what do you bet we can get a message out now? And there it is. All right. So those are my short vignettes. I have a couple of other things that is the live view lifecycle. Now I want to talk a little bit about some of the newer things that we've been working on and what we've been adding to make it easier for you to build code that interacts with the live view lifecycle. So let's first take a look at live view hooks. Interestingly enough, you've been seeing hooks throughout the course of this demo. So one place where I am using live view hooks is specifically here for the navigation. This navigation lives in the live template for this, or I'm sorry, the live layout template for this app. So I've duplicated the layout. I have a static layout and live layout that look the same in terms of the navigation. I have a set of functions that we can look at here for generating breadcrumbs. It's not traditionally a breadcrumb, it's a nav menu, but same concept sort of applies. What is done, and the reason that it makes sense as a hook is because we move the actual logic into a centralized place, so you have to re-invoke this stuff, or you re-invoke it all the time, but you don't have to redefine it in all of your live views. So working at Cargo Sense, where we do logistics intelligence, and I do lots and lots of live view, we have dozens of live views or more that we are still even today invoking initialization stuff in every mount function. And if you miss one, it's a big pain because it's hard to track down problems. So this is what mount hooks, or really all the hooks, it's a problem they attempt to solve, specifically mount hooks, because getting stuff into the mount, that initial kickoff is a little bit more difficult. So we wanted to make sure that was made a little bit easier. So first, let's look at the navigation. This is a module just holding on to a couple of things, and specifically I want to look at the on-mount callbacks. So we'll look at where these get loaded in just a minute. But the on-mount callback is a defined by using the on-mount macro in your live view, or in your the live view macro in your web module, or as we'll see in a moment, in the router. But from here, when we define that name, when we define what's going to what module we're going to invoke, we can give it an argument here to customize it a bit. By default, it is the Atom default. And this will get invoked prior to mount being invoked. Chris McCord talked about this a little bit in his keynote yesterday. And this is the structure, or part of the structure of what needs to be returned when you do this. So if you're calling a mount hook, you return either the Atom CONT for continue and then the socket, or you return halt and the socket. To halt out of a mount, you have to redirect. So most of the time out of mount, unless your intention is to redirect this away from the page, you're going to be using continue socket here. Curiously, what we do here, and the part that makes this a lot of fun, and I got to give a shout out to Ben Wilson at Cargo Sense, creator of Absinthe, and just all around great guy and super smart. When I started talking to him about the idea of lifecycle hooks, he said, "But what if we did it at runtime though?" And I was told macros. And we talked about it, and then I talked to Chris and Jose and the rest of the core team, and they really liked the idea. And the more we played with it, it felt like it opened up a lot more possibilities for everyone to be able to do things with hooks. So that said, we do the attach, and we attach another hook here in our on-mount hook. We attach handle params hook. The handle params hook will receive the params, and it will receive the arguments for the params callback. This gets invoked before your live views params. All of the hooks come ahead and have the ability to halt the execution of the actual live view callback. That's what halt is all about. So in this params hook, though, we continue because you may be needing params. We're just here to grab some data. So, and in that way, we assign new to the socket the current path, which we pull from the URL that came through params. We parse that out, grab the path, and apply that to current path. And we do that so that in our navigation component that actually generates the breadcrumbs or the navigation elements, we have some code that looks like this. And this is probably doing a very poor job of using the new slots API, but I was just playing around with this a little bit last night, and so I thought I'd see what it looked like. So we have our menu. We do our generation of each of the breadcrumbs. This for breadcrumbs is link, and for live breadcrumbs does a live redirect, and it builds that out. And where it actually it's within this breadcrumb attributes helper, where we do the path check to see if we are the current path, and if so, we set the ARIA current value, and that handles the styling. So that's hooks. I'm going to quickly talk about sessions, and I want to make sure I leave plenty of time for questions because there's a lot here. And to that end, if there's something I haven't talked about, because there's so much here, if there's anything that I can help to make clearer or that I didn't cover that you want to know about, please reach out. I'm on Twitter at mcrum, in the Elixir Slack at Crum there. But anyway, reach out. I'm here to help. More than happy to be a resource. Would love to be a resource for you on your journey in Elixir. So that said, our last piece here just about live sessions. So my very last demo is let's see, we've been inside all of our live session and live view lifecycle talk. Let's see if we can go outside. It stands to reason. So here we are inside. Let's see how exactly that goes down. This is the live session defined. By default, everything falls in a default live session. But when we define a live session, it gives us the ability to add these additional callbacks, such as an on-mount list or stack of hooks that we would like to invoke, some additional session data. And so this is our inside route. And then you'll see here as we go and look, or our inside session. So we go down here and look at outside, we see that there's a couple of other ones that are going to do some things, redirect, if was inside. So basically looking for a session token we set on the initial dead render that put it into the session. And then if you have it, we're going to redirect you back into there. So effectively, once you've been inside, you cannot go outside. That said, if you want to go outside, go over here and I will clear site data and I can go there directly. But alas, once you've been inside, you cannot go back outside. Anyway, that's it for the demo side of things. I hope you enjoyed. Would love to hear your thoughts, and yeah, I hope you learned something today. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Crum. Great talk.
Thank you.
Got a lot of comments in the chat about the style of this talk. So congrats on that.
Oh, thanks.
All right. So I think we have a little bit of time. There's a question about what editor are you using?
What editor am I using? That was just VS Code. What you saw in the browser was called, what do I want to refer to that as? Procrastination is probably the best way to refer to it. So the other hook, and I will happily open source this code at some juncture and put it up on GitHub so y'all can check it out. But the other hook that I didn't show that was in there was one that sort of a two-parter. It has effectively it reads the file and stores it as a module variable or a module attribute, and then reads that back out into a content editable element. And when you save it, sends a notification or a push event back up through a client-side hook, and then saves overwrites the file. So like if I showed you my GitHub right now, you would see, or the Git. If I did a Git status, you'd see a lot of unsaved files or uncommitted changes in what I was doing. So that was really unnecessary, but it was part of sort of exploring some of the lifecycle things. For examples, that was one of the things I was playing around with. So yeah, so that was the editor, and then I think it's just like the Monokai style. I actually use the makeup package in Elixir to do the styling of the code that I was like pulling in at runtime and showing there. So
there's also, please write a book about this. And there's a couple asking if there's a repo where they can see all this code. Or if
Yeah, there will be at some juncture. So I'm working on a thing. You may have seen it a little bit in there. It was kind of at the bottom, and I purposefully didn't refer directly to it, but I'm in the midst of building a debug toolbar for the Phoenix framework. I tweeted recently. I tried to do a teaser. I'm not very good at it, but then again, I'm not Jose Valim. But to say that there's been something that's been bugging me. It wasn't that I have a problem with the idea that dead views are dead to us. That's fine. It was that sometimes my dead views still have bugs. So I'm working on a debug toolbar. It will work for dead and live renders. It has some interesting properties that make it easy to see errors when they happen, or to get more information out of your live view in a little bit more easily digestible way. I saw somebody gave a lightning talk yesterday on something called ice cream, and I would very much love to talk to that person. So if you see this, please reach out, because you are doing things that I would love to be doing in the debug toolbar, and so we should collab. Yeah, I will absolutely open source the code. I just got to figure out order of operations.
Great. Yeah, there were like 3 questions about that. Oh, there's one about, I don't know where it is now. Okay, so I approve it, and I don't know where is it now. I'll make sure you get it, so you can answer it maybe in social media or some other.
That sounds good.
Oh yeah, here it is. You mentioned that you were going to initially implement hooks as a macro, making it compile time, but you decided to go with runtime. Is there any performance or other downsides with this decision?
So I'm probably not the best person to answer that question. I just in the course of writing some of this talk had a light bulb moment about macros myself. So I am now dangerous with macros. Look out. But I don't think so. The impression that I got was that it was more of a, at first blush, it seemed like that would make the most sense. Sure, we'll make it. It's something we can do. We can inject some code. It'll just run, and no big deal. And it was just sort of as we explored the idea of but I think some of it may have come from. Well, certainly Ben Wilson had thoughts, as I said, about with his experience with doing Absinthe and the plug, sort of a plug-like pipeline there for the middleware, and things that I think he would like to go back and do again. But we talked through some of the different just things that you can do when it's runtime. It's a little bit easier than if it is compile time. Specifically, you can kind of futz with things. I'm not recommending that you do this necessarily, but I'm interested to see how people sort of I'll say misuse, but I don't mean that to say don't do it. I just mean I'm interested to see how the interesting ways people come up with kind of trying to implement hooks or add additional things to hook, things we haven't thought of yet. Because I have a very sort of straightforward line of thinking when it comes to how that stuff gets executed. I'm excited to see folks sort of break away from that and do something that we hadn't considered and see where that lands us. So I don't think that I don't think there's a huge performance thing. Ultimately, if I'm recalling what Chris McCord said to me at one point, which was we have to invoke the function one way or the other anyway. So there's not really there's not a lot of overhead to save, in that we still have to maintain a list of the things you want called and called.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's gonna be all for now.
That's our time. Okay. Well, thank you again, everyone, for coming and listening to all of this stuff. And please do reach out if there's anything I didn't cover that you'd like to know about.
Thank you so much.